thanks everybody for coming along. I wanted to just give a brief introduction about myself. This presentation is based on my master's thesis research, and the paper is called Academia, Estate Management and Synergies in Higher Education Institutes, the low-hanging fruit. So a little bit about myself. I work for DCU States Office, so I'm the States Project Manager. My interest in building information modelling, I suppose, came from working on the client side and understanding the information that was required, information that was being asked for, and how that information was being delivered and managed. On the right-hand side here is Professor Roger West. He was supervisor on my dissertation. He's with TCD, and I'll get to an example of how TCD are, I suppose, maybe benefiting from some of my research. So just to run you through the presentation, I'm going to go through the introduction, the background, then the methodology of my dissertation, some of the outcomes, some of the findings, and a bit of a discussion on those, and then some conclusions to do with some of the recommendations. So obviously you're all familiar with this because you've read it in preparation for my talk. So there it is on the right hand side, there's my paper. So I started off my dissertation with developing out a hypothesis. So working within the estates area of a university and understanding that we're vital support services. We're not core business, but we support the university in their undertaking to educate undergraduates, to see them out the other side of graduation, and all things generally related to teaching and research. So that's my dissertation hypothesis. There was 4 areas of specific investigation. First was to investigate the current state of BIM adoption within higher education institutes, both on the academic side and also on the estates management side. To explore the different challenges, barriers, risks and benefits associated with BIM adoption for a HEI, and to examine the potential for academic and administrative support areas to create a partnership where they could collaborate together and mutually benefit from information that was contained within built assets. And finally then, to assess the successful adoption of BIM in Irish HEIs, could it lead to improvements within both areas? So just a bit of a background on, or an explanation of what a knowledge transfer partnership is. So a knowledge transfer partnership, or KTP, is an undertaking between a higher education institute and a private company to share knowledge to assist with industry development. The interesting thing about this is, from my own experience, I see that the Estates Office can take up the role of an industry partner, where we can provide information on built assets to educators, to the students, where they can learn from the information that we provide, and they can also feed back in to what we're doing to try and improve what we do ourselves. And just to generate that feedback loop so that we can all learn from the same ecosystem and we're all living in the same environment. So we're all familiar with the National BIM Council, the digital roadmap. Interestingly, there's a lot of recommendations in there, and there's a lot of strategy, procedures, and two particular recommendations that jumped out at me as part of my research was number 3 and 4. The first one was to develop a consistent, seamless and coherent digital experience for students in Irish education. And the second one then was to support a public sector BIM adoption mandate. So with this MBC roadmap, the positives in this are that they recognise the importance of education and training. We have a particular stream within the roadmap itself for education and training. And the roadmap sets out specific performance targets, such as reducing project delivery programs, also increasing exports and reducing capital costs. Just down here on the right hand side, it's not very clear. The recommendation is in terms of education and training really is to support that digital connected education for students, and that's essentially where the Estates Office, I think, in my opinion, is so important for a university. So Ireland's National Skills Strategy reported on a skills shortage in areas particularly related to ICT and engineering. We also have industry reports which state that one of the main challenges here, 40% of industry leaders reported that skills shortages was a real challenge. But are we really short on skills? On the right hand side we have WIT and TU Dublin, two students who won the BIM World Skills Competition, and they spoke earlier on, answered a lot of questions. It was really impressive. And here on the right hand side is a section out of the National BIM report, and right up there at the very top was lack of in-house experience, and just below that then lack of training, featuring very high on barriers to BIM adoption within industry. So, research, all of the different challenges, the different barriers, the different risks and the different benefits. If you count the benefits in green, that's strategic, because I want to make this worthwhile. There's more benefits than there are challenges. So up on the screen here you'll see all the different challenges, barriers, risks and benefits that I uncovered as part of my research. And some of them are very simple. We've got a lack of skilled staff. We got change in established processes and workflows, resistance to change, but the benefits are there. We need to educate students so that they have future skill requirements. We need to provide them with a high quality learning environment, and with that then those students will come into industry, and we should see benefits in productivity and efficiencies. So a little bit about my research. It followed a structured approach. Unfortunately, the image on the left-hand side is not very clear, but it was basically a roadmap to go through what I was investigating, what I was going to research, and hopefully reach down to a conclusion based on my hypothesis. And on the right-hand side then is just the structured approach. So bringing it through the different stages, from literature review to question surveys and semi-structured interviews, and then drawing it down to conclusions. So a little bit about the secondary research, literature review. Through undertaking the research, it was interesting to find out different aspects of what higher education institutes were doing, both in Ireland and internationally, in terms of BIM adoption. The primary research online, the survey questionnaire, some of the respondents are up here, and there's some of the trends. So 61 people were invited to participate in the survey, and a total of 32 responses were gathered. Some of the respondents are shown here from different higher education institutes in Ireland. So, some of the outcomes. So I've put some graphs up here from the questionnaire, and I'll just run through them quickly. All of the questions, there were 18 in total. I haven't put them all up here, so we won't go through them all. But some of the key ones, just to show that the respondents, 93% of respondents were actually from higher education institutes. That gave me a clarity on what I was trying to prove, and to show that the information that I was gathering was accurate and was from the right source. In the middle here we have an indication of where people were employed within higher education. And there was an even mix of people from academia and the estates management areas. So a good response and a good level, a good mix of respondents, so that I could gather the information and disseminate it. On the right hand side then, the next question was, I asked, where did you think the BIM expertise was distributed within your institute? And the respondents were, it was evenly mixed between the estates management areas and academia. And this is interesting, I'll come back to this later on. Additional questions I asked respondents, did they think that there was BIM expertise within their institute? Overwhelmingly, people were of the opinion that it did exist. Second question here in the middle, then I asked, had your institute adopted BIM within academia? Overwhelmingly, people responded with the answer was yes. And then the same question asked for had your institute adopted BIM in the estates management area? Again, overwhelmingly, the response was yes. So on the left-hand side, I asked respondents, did they think that there was a need to adopt BIM? And you can see from the responses here, overwhelmingly, people could see the need for BIM. And on the right-hand side then, I asked respondents for different uses, and right up there at the top, teaching and research were high on people's, I suppose, envisaged usage. And then just below that then was capital and CapEx and OpEx, so capital and operational expenditure. So the outcomes, BIM adoption for industry and academia. So in terms of barriers, one of the key barriers to BIM adoption within an higher education institute in Ireland is the lack of an implementation strategy. And you can see here from the responses that a large proportion of respondents replied that they didn't have an implementation strategy. And an even larger proportion of respondents said that they did not know. That indicated to me that although BIM was being implemented and there was expertise within the university, that it wasn't structured, so there wasn't a strategy in place to support it. Moving on then, the next question I asked respondents was, did they think that they could benefit in either of their areas from BIM adoption? And you can see from the responses there in green that overwhelmingly people could see that there were benefits, in their opinion, to be made from BIM adoption. So different challenges and barriers. Some of the, sorry, I apologise that image is not very clear. Some of the challenges and barriers that were communicated were the lack of in-house training, time and resources. So, next question, had the academic and admin area collaborated? So, the responses indicated that levels of BIM adoption in academic areas was high, 66% of respondents reported that. Also in estates management, 55%. But there was some evidence of collaboration between both areas. However, BIM adoption is happening in isolation, and opportunities to form partnerships was not being fully explored. Further question was to do with BIM expertise already available. If it was available, could a partnership be formed? And the finding from this response was that 66% of respondents were of the opinion that there was expertise within their institute, and that it could be used to form a knowledge transfer partnership. The results show that the BIM expertise was spread evenly amongst both areas of institutes in Ireland, and this has suggested that a partnership of this kind could be possible to support BIM adoption. So some discussions and some findings. The extent of BIM adoption within Ireland. So what I found from my research was that while academic areas of higher education institutes were adopting BIM, there was lack of evidence that administrative support areas were also adopting BIM. Now this could be due to many different reasons, but one of them I found was it was hard to source information on what the estates officers were doing within institutes in Ireland. Secondly, Irish higher education institutes have reported that BIM be used on large capital projects. This is reported in the BICP report in 2016. Although there was a lack of evidence that it was being used for operational functions, instead choosing to use BIM for design and construction phases of large capital projects only. The next finding was the business case for BIM. And my research discovered that it was clear from the research undertaken that there were benefits to be realised from BIM adoption for a higher education institute, but there were also significant challenges, barriers, risks that needed to be overcome, and that's key for me. That's where the strategy will come into play. And lastly, creating a partnership to improve relevant functions of an higher education institute. The evidence from the research undertaken suggests that existing BIM expertise within higher education institute could be used to form a knowledge transfer partnership to benefit both areas. BIM expertise was spread evenly amongst the areas, both of these, and that suggests a collaborative knowledge transfer partnership could be possible. If the expertise exists in both areas and there was a strategy behind it, then it would be possible to form one. Some interesting examples were uncovered as part of the research. Two that stood out were in NUIG right here in Galway, and also in Carleton University, who have a digital campus innovation project. So there's clear existence of living lab spaces being used not only for operational purposes but also to support teaching and research. And in fact, Carleton University are using some of the information from their built assets to form new courses for students. So the conclusion: my research has established the need for higher education institutes to adopt BIM to improve relevant teaching, research and operational functions. Benefits from BIM adoption could be realised if a strategy is in place to support this. Equally, any challenge or barrier that may exist can also be addressed with the use of a strategy to help reduce or remove these. And finally, a collaborative knowledge transfer partnership and a strategic plan to identify and communicate clear benefits to be gained by moving away from inefficient traditional paper-based processes to smart digital technologies should be developed to support BIM adoption within higher education institutes in Ireland. I just wanted to show a bit of an example of Carleton University. This was one, if you have time to look it up to see what they're doing as part of their DCI project. It's very interesting in the fact that they put together a framework where the estates office are now delivering built assets with different information coming from sensors. I suppose we're talking about digital twins here as well today. And just to see that when a partnership exists, that not only can it benefit the estates, so researchers and teachers are learning from this and giving those results back to estates, but also estates are helping with the core business of the university by providing them with information. Here's one that's a little bit closer to home, NUIG. This is, I think, from 2011, but essentially researchers in NUIG are using the new engineering building where they've input sensors into the building and they have access to building management systems, and they're using this for their own teaching and research. We're actually going to visit the new engineering building tomorrow, and it would be interesting to find out if any of that research is going back into operations to try and improve what they're doing. Almost there. This is something that Roger West has recently told me about. Some people in the room will be familiar with the Trinity Business School. I'm particularly interested in this as I actually wrote the EIR for this. Michael may or may not thank me for that, for previous existence, but it does exist. TCD academics now have full access to the business school. They're inputting wireless sensors to measure things like humidity, temperature, I suppose room occupancy. And they're going to use this information as part of an MSc project to inform not only students and their current research and teaching, but also looking towards the new E3 development and what information can come from these sensors that could improve the built asset, and then continue that cycle where continual improvements can be made. So it's a very interesting and I suppose exciting project. Now, although it's not an official knowledge transfer partnership yet, I know Roger, and it will probably most likely happen once he gets the right person to sign the document to agree to it. So congratulations to Roger for that. So DCU, it's where I'm currently employed. Just a little bit of background about what DCU are doing. We currently have a master plan which we're looking to model up all three campuses into a digital campus master plan. That's not a pop-up book master plan. We'll definitely get the digital information. And we also have two large capital projects which we've required BIM to be used on. One of the important things for the Estates Office is DCU's strategic plan, and in there they have a digital campus vision, and it's essentially given us the opportunity to align ourselves to that strategy. So when we provide this information, when we produce this information through design teams and it's operational, We are looking at opportunities where we can provide information into this digital campus vision. It could potentially be used by students for their teaching and research, and it will also help us with strategic goal 8.2, which is more sustainable operations. Oh, almost there. Okay, so the end. That's me on the left-hand side, undertaking my dissertation. A little bit more paper, but I'm hoping for a little bit more of this. This is Block F in DCU, and this is our new student residences, which has just gone in for planning. So I'm just about finished. So thank you for attending the talk. Go easy on the questions, Michael. And I just want to say thank you to Roger. Thanks to Ger and Adolfo and DCU for supporting me with the Masters, and also thanks to everybody in TU Dublin and CitA.